Hi, this is Shira Rubinoff. I'm here with Tim Burlowski, Senior Director, Product Management, Global Cyber Resilience Lead for Veritas. Tim, it's a pleasure to be with you here this morning.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to have our conversation.
And likewise. So, Tim, the cyber landscape, as we know, is quite vast, and cyber attacks have increased exponentially. The frequency and speed of these attacks are something we've never seen before. So, Tim, can you please provide some insights into the current landscape of cyber attacks and what specific types of cyber threats are you observing today? And how are organizations responding to these challenges now and going forward? Quite a loaded question, but I know you have the answers.
Well, let's just step through it. When I think about the cyber attacks we're seeing today, what you said about the volume of the attacks is the number one thing that stands out to me. But the changes we've experienced over the last few years have been kind of stunning as well, because attackers are often logging into infrastructure, meaning the first step is to compromise credentials. And that could happen in a variety of ways, whether it's through phishing attacks or other kinds of related attacks on identity. That's the big challenge we're seeing today. And this is true across IT, but my role is really to think about the backup and recovery infrastructure. And we think about that two ways. I mean, first of all, we just have to protect that infrastructure to make sure that vault of data, which depend on when there's a real disaster, is safe and available. The second piece is making sure that when you need to do a recovery, you can be confident about that because you've prepared, you've got the data that you need, and your people have been working together with the security team. That's one of the reasons we've invested a lot in tooling to work together with other security ecosystem folks, because frankly, in this dangerous world, no one of us can provide every solution that the customer needs to protect the perimeter, to see what's happening inside the organization, to detect insider threats, and on and on and on. So our job is to partner with the best.
You know, you said a lot of good things, but one thing I just want to tap into for a moment, that the people work alongside the security team. You know, in the past, it was always security handles security. But as we know, that's just not the case and can't be the case in organizations. Can you talk to that point for a moment?
Absolutely, and often when I would meet backup and recovery people, they were closely related to storage, working in an infrastructure team, and sometimes they didn't even know who their security team was. Today, I'm finding they're starting to co-locate with security teams. Sometimes they report differently, but they work on tabletop exercises together. So the processes and people are getting more and more aligned. And that's a great news story for, I think, for the whole industry, and really speaks to confident cyber recovery. When those people haven't met and they have a bad day and they're meeting for the first time, they realize their tools and processes are totally different, and that creates challenges in terms of how they relate and react. But like I said, it's changing. I'm meeting with the customer later this morning, and they've completely centralized backup and recovery with business continuity and with their security teams, because it's just so crucial that they have a joined up plan.
Oh, certainly. Well said. And in the context of cybersecurity, how do you define and prioritize foundational cyber resiliency? And when I say foundational cyber resiliency, obviously it's multi-layered, but let's start from the bottom up.
Boy, how do I define that? I always ground myself in the frameworks. And so, a lot of times I think about the NIST framework, which I'm so pleased that they've done some adjustments this year, meaning it used to be just this identify, protect, detect, recover, respond kind of framework. Now they have the governance framework. And it does all start with governance, where you understand your risk profile and you're auditing yourself against what you think you should be doing. So that's where I always start, and especially because it's such a big topic. When you say, how do you define cyber resilience? How do you define cyber defense? And it all starts with, well, what's my risk profile? And we all have a different tolerance for risk. We all have a different approach, whether you're under constant threat from nation states, like maybe a government organization might be, or if you're a smaller mom and pop operation and you've got really only got SaaS applications. And so you just have to think about what's my risk profile? How do I best secure and defend it? And then, I'll just say that we find over and over again, a lot of cyber attacks can be stopped by basic hygiene, meaning things like MFA, things like don't share passwords, the things that you thought people were doing 15, 20 years ago, turns out there's a few people who haven't caught up to the times.
You know what? That's just regular, as you mentioned, cyber hygiene, where a lot of companies or organizations, they look to the side and think that's not an important part of security within an organization. But you got the people, the process, and the technology, and the process in the middle is the glue. And if all those are not linked together in a very systematic way, then you're going to be open to attack, open to breaches. And, as you continue to discuss that, what key strategies, and I know there's no one size fits all with organizations, as you mentioned, there's different profiles for every organization, different types of security measures organizations need. A lot are the same, some are different. But what key strategies or practices do you believe are essential for any organization for building a strong cyber resiliency foundation in today's threat landscape? And let's just talk about the ones that go across the board that everybody needs to take a look at.
Well, I think you have to always start with the end in mind. Where do you want to be? And considering the end in mind, we've created a great checklist to help people with their cyber resiliency, and it starts with the basics. And as the basics could be as simple as you need to take an inventory of your software and make sure it's all running a version from this decade. I still meet major organizations where they're talking to me about something that is so far in the past, it staggers the imagination. And so you start out with the basics of that inventory and assessment, and then you drive into, okay, if my goal is a confident cyber recovery, did I back up the right things? Is everything backed up? Can I test myself? Do those tests come back positive? I'm used to restoring one thing. What if I have to restore 1,000 things? What happens in those circumstances? You test yourself, then you review and you learn and you figure out, what do I need to do better to make this happen? People are always discovering, when you really test yourself, there was a gap. And it's really easy to understand, because if you had a perfect plan, IT changes next week, next month. And so you actually need to constantly be updating your plan and reacting to what you have now.
Certainly. And Tim, can you elaborate on how Veritas is actively working to advance cyber resilience in today's digital landscape? And that's coming from many different angles, lots of different organizations, but specifically, what is your organization doing on this front?
It's very multi-pronged. So I'll start with how we build our software. We align to the NIST Secure Software Development Framework, and we've been working to enhance that over time, meaning we have certain practices, everything from training to red teaming to hiring external pen testers. But those practices have gotten more thorough over time. And I'm very happy to say the people who run our product security group and manage that secure software development have the right to stop a release, and they will throw the flag if they feel like our need to secure the product and build it in the right way isn't met. We work with government agencies around the world to get the best threat intelligence. We work with our cybersecurity vendors to get their threat intelligence. And then lastly, I'll say we test ourselves. And so we have an isolated red lab that's isolated from the internet. It's isolated from our own production networks, where we bring in malware, ransomware, the latest encryptors that are released by the cyber criminals. And we test our software. And that means we test our defenses, we test our ability to detect and manage those. And those are the kind of things we're actively doing to make sure we can help our customers if or when they have the bad day.
It's interesting. It's if or when, and now it's not only will it happen, it's when it's going to happen. So certainly being prepared, as you mentioned, is critical for everybody, for every organization, large or small. Everybody's a target, everybody's a sitting duck, everybody has to be prepared. So what innovative solutions or initiatives is Veritas spearheading in this environment to enhance cybersecurity and help other organizations build greater resilience against cyber threats? And I know from earlier conversations with the company, I was hearing some very interesting things. Love to hear from you.
Oh, sure. So our latest release of software, we did a number of things to make our infrastructure more self-defending than it's ever been, meaning we have machine learning processes that are looking at the data that you're backing up and understanding any surprises in that data. And we've been, in our lab, very effective at catching new encrypting techniques that are very different, meaning the criminals, in order to do their job, need to encrypt things nearly instantly. And that means they've started to adjust their encryption approaches, not encrypting every single block of data, but just key blocks of data. And as we do that, we make sure that our ability to catch that with our entropy detection allows the customer to not have a long training period. They don't have to interrupt production backups with complex secondary processes, and we can do it just in line as it's occurring. The second thing is we've made it so that we can detect malicious administrator actions, meaning something that, again, is a surprise to us that the administrator hasn't done this before, might be suspicious, might be coming from a suspicious location. And we detect that, and then we'll add additional multi-factor authentication or multi-person authorization into the workflow. So if someone has a credential that's stolen and they're acting nefariously, we'll catch that and attempt to stop it or thwart it. Now, it's not enough for us to do that inside of the backup infrastructure. We want to connect the dots to the data in the entire enterprise. We partner with Secure Onyx. They do user behavior analysis. And when you think about what they do, they see it from the whole enterprise perspective, even tools like Workday. So you could understand, is this employee under investigation for some reason, or thinking about leaving the company? And all of those could be added together to really get a 360 view of that end user. We've done similar kind of work with Splunk so that they have access to our information that we provide in terms of audit trails, so you can see it all in one place. And when you're doing an investigation into potential indicator of compromise, that can be done across the entire enterprise. So those are just three examples of what we've been doing lately, but it's all about the end user, making sure we've protected those key credentials.
Oh, that's a great insight. Thank you, Tim. And I always like to ask my guests, because they all come from different backgrounds and have different experience, just a cybersecurity point or a helpful hint to our audience that you think is very important for them to be careful with or think about when they're going about their daily lives, whether it's personal or within industry, the organizations, just anything you think is important for them to think about.
Wow. It goes back to fundamental basics. Make sure you're covering the basics. It could be as simple as having the right locks on your data center, if you still have a data center on your physical premise. It could be much more complicated, like upgrading to a software created in this century. It could be a little bit more interesting, like turning on MFA or multi-person authorization. But you have to work that stack of the basics. Too often people get excited about the next buzzword from a vendor, but the truth is, if you haven't locked the door, if you haven't background checked your employees, if you haven't done the basics, you're going to suffer as a result.
Well said. I very much agree over there. Well, Tim, it was a pleasure speaking with you today, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Oh, thanks so much for the opportunity. Great to meet you.
You as well. Thank you.